Hello. Today I posted on my Facebook page that's a little bit of a coincidence. 11th of August sees the passing of two great luminaries of the Anglo-Catholic movement. On 11th of August 1890, John Henry Cardinal Newman passed into glory. And 68 years later, Father Alfred Patten died of a stroke that he suffered moments after celebrating Mass at the Walsingham Shrine. Of course, these two men do represent some very important aspects of Anglican Catholic faith and practice, as Archbishop Haviland would say. Of course, we lost John Henry Newman from the Church of England to Rome. There is evidence that he wasn't quite as converted to Rome as one might think, but obviously he made inroads for Roman Catholics. The Birmingham Oratory, for example, the work he did at the university in Dublin. So even after he left Anglicanism, he did a lot for theological knowledge. Father Patten, on the other hand, he, as you may know, reinstituted the shrine of Our Lady of St. Walsingham, which is quite an astounding feat given the sort of resistance that he received from his bishop in re-establishing a piety, a practice that had been destroyed by Henry VIII. And indeed, if you go to Walsingham, there's even a boss on the vaults in the shape of Father Patten. Now, we may have lost John Henry Newman to Rome. That doesn't stop him from being Catholic. And Father Patten himself was quite clearly very Catholic. The practices that he re-established are still available today. Though a sad fact of the matter is that as an Anglican Catholic, and therefore out of communion with the Church of England, none of us can now say Mass at Walsingham, which is a great pity. But one looks at these two gentlemen and one wonders what they would make of how Christianity and Catholicism is going in this country. Would they be Anglican Catholic like me and my friends? Can't speculate. You never know. But what we do know is that what they have promoted is the idea that faith and practice must come from orthodoxy, from Christian orthodoxy. We can't let our practice determine our orthodoxy, however well-meaning it is. And perhaps this is where we see a discrepancy between a church that does social work and puts that first, and a church that celebrates the sacraments first. Now, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that the church should not be preoccupied with feeding the poor, clothing the hungry. Those are wonderful works of mercy. But they are works of mercy that come from a faith. They must be based in faith. There are corporal acts of mercy, there are spiritual acts of mercy. And both are important, and both of them rely upon the person, the individual, knowing the will of God. And that's where people make big mistakes. They say, for example, that for inclusion we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that, for the purpose of including people. Well, to my reckoning, no one has been excluded from the Mass. It's people who exclude themselves from the Mass. It's people who exclude themselves from the Catholic faith by not believing what the Catholic faith teaches. We have to listen to God first before we do anything. It is sometimes better not to do a good thing in order to do a better thing. Sometimes it is better not to say anything, so that the silence itself might speak more volumes. That's obviously a lesson I haven't learnt yet. So, John Henry Newman, a very powerful, though not infallible, intellect, and Father Patten, a man of great and simple holiness, represent something of what I'm talking about. Unless we ground ourselves in God and come to know God through what the Church has always taught, then we will never know him. Because God is not a social construction. The number of relatively poor people in this country depends on what you mean by relative. But there's very little absolute poverty in this country. But there is a lot of great poverty elsewhere in the world. And one might consider the vaccination program and say, well, we can reject having vaccines, and we can give our reasons for doing so. Or we can boast that 75% of the population is vaccinated, which is wonderful. But then you ask the question, what about worldwide? So, often when we think about our own social constructions, when we think about our own motivations, our own hobby horses, we can be led astray. We can be so focused on our own politics that we miss the suffering of innocent people half a world away. We have to be careful. And that's why we ground ourselves in God. We cannot allow our minds to be occupied by first world problems, as they're called, when there are people who are in different countries who are struggling to live. So, faith is where we start, and that faith is informed by Orthodox teaching. That's where we must begin with God. And it is from his calling, listening to his voice, not the voice of society, but the voice that comes through our conviction, through our informing ourselves from what the Church teaches, that we are able to do something that is truly remarkable. If Father Patten can produce this little beacon of devotion in Walsingham, despite the society, the Church of England society at the time, really being against it, then that is an incredible feat. If John Henry Newman, who, discouraged by the attitude of the Church of England at the time, and his own studies, being pushed by his own studies to go to Rome, that still nonetheless he shows England, the Church of England, that it has a Catholicism of its own. The same Catholicism as the rest of the church, but with an English flavour, fish and chips or something like that. Then that's remarkable too. Because it gives hope for people learning, teaching. Lets people know the faith, and therefore will come closer to God. So we do have to be careful with how we are pious, how we demonstrate our faith. We must do so knowing what the faith is and living that, not what we think it is. Too many people say, oh, love is love, and then go on and produce an idea of love which is so far removed from what St. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 13 that you begin to wonder what on earth they're talking about. And we find it's a love that they've made up. So, may God bless you as you walk in faith to Christ. And the same faith which the Church has always taught. May you walk with the saints. May you walk with all those who have borne witness from the earliest times up until now. May you walk with those who will be influenced by you in your Catholic faith too. May your practices be sincere, and God bless them and bring them to good fruit. God bless you, and please pray for me.